Hello, welcome to my video. And today we're going to be discussing a book from my favorite author, Later by Stephen King. And this book was a lot of fun. It's very short, and I have mixed feelings about it, so let's just dive into it. At its core, Later is a coming-of-age story about a young man of special powers, and how those around him manipulate and use him because of his innate abilities. At its core, Later is a coming-of-age story about a young boy with special powers, and about how those around him use and manipulate him because of his abilities. And it's compelling, and it's easy to get emotionally invested in this story, and it's easy to feel empathy for our main protagonists. A lot of authors do not do a good job at writing from the point of view of children. They either make the children too smart and mature that it seems unbelievable that we're hearing the story from a child, or they make the children so dumb that the story is not compelling or deep enough. But Stephen King is a father, and he's aware that even though children are not as smart as adults, they see a lot more than we think. And what they do see, they interpret, maybe not correctly, but they interpret in their own way. And Later is definitely a story where you could see that Jamie may not completely understand everything that's going on around him, but he has his own rationale, and it makes sense, and Stephen King does a very good job at writing from the point of view of a young boy. Later is a very small book, especially by Stephen King standards. It's pretty thin. You could read it in a sitting or two. And Stephen King has a very well-earned reputation for being a little too long-winded in his novels. He writes a lot. There's hundreds of pages of fluff in his big novels. And you finish a Stephen King book, and sometimes it's very easy to feel a sense of frustration at knowing that at least 2 hours of your time reading this book were maybe not needed. But there's a purpose for the fluff. It helps you get to know the characters a little bit more. And when you know somebody a little bit more, you feel a little bit more empathy. And a little bit more of empathy has an exponential effect on how you immerse yourself in the story and your emotional reaction to that story. And I feel like though some Stephen King novels have too much fluff, Later is definitely a book that could have benefited from more fluff. Because in reality, Later just tells the story of about 5 events in Jamie's life. And it's a very compelling premise. A boy that can see dead people, and when he talks to them, they have to tell him the truth. There's a lot you could do with that. But it really only tells like 5 or 6 stories about it. And I have a hard time believing that the people around him that are aware of his powers wouldn't use his powers to benefit themselves more. Children with special abilities get used in life. In real life, in fiction, it makes sense. They have a power, you weaponize it. And I just feel like Jamie's powers weren't very much explored inside this story. In Stephen King novels, I will often know the wallpaper and the furniture layout of a character's room, and it will be described to me in painstaking detail. But I don't know too much about what happens in Jamie's life, and that frustrates me, because in some Stephen King novels, I know so much about a background character that'll be dead in 2 pages, and I didn't need to know that. But I really feel like I could have benefited from knowing more about Jamie's life. Perhaps Later could have told, more years of Jamie's life in story form. Maybe like Revival. Like Revival tells a story of a young man until he's an old man. And you see how his life experiences affect him, along his life path towards the end. And it's very compelling. It makes for a little bit longer read, but it helps get you immersed. But Later's just told over a few years, and it makes constant time jumps. So, yeah, I would have liked some more fluff in Later. I would have liked to see Jamie's powers explored more, liked to see how his powers affect the course of his life. But I don't really get to see too much of that, and I find that kind of disappointing. In some ways, Later suffers from the same problem as Stephen King's other hard case crime novels. They're too short. They don't tell a nice, dense story that's immersive for a lot of more mature readers. It's a YA read. All of his hard case crime novels are appropriate for young people to read. Teenagers, not too much gore, not too much controversial material. So easy to digest. It's a really good sample. If you're afraid of Stephen King's reputation, try one of his hard case crime novels. But there's one thing about Later that gives me a very similar vibe to the ending of The Colorado Kid. Stephen King ends Later with a revelation about Jamie's life that is ground-shattering. And we don't get any closure for that. And I feel like a major theme for Stephen King's hard case crime novels is sometimes you don't get closure in stories. But this isn't real life. This is fiction. It's meant to be unrealistic. I want closure. And it's not just like Stephen King's usual anticlimactic endings. It's like he's purposely withholding information. And that bugged me. I enjoyed the journey up until the last 2 pages of later, and then Stephen King puts this question in my mind, and like a worm, it's burrowing through my brain, and it bothers me as more time passes. Maybe that's kind of like the art of storytelling. You tell just enough of the story that you love it and enjoy the story, but not so much that it kind of dilutes what you love. I want more of later, and I'm not gonna get it. And that's frustrating, but maybe as time goes on, I'll find it beautiful. I don't think so, but we'll have to see. So give Later a try if you want to sample Stephen King. You like a nice suspenseful story about a young man dealing with manipulative adults. You'll find it easy to get emotionally invested. Give it a try. Thank you for watching my video, guys. If you liked it, push that little thumbs up icon, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.